Right now, a federal judge finding that the NYPD violated the civil rights of tens of thousands with a controversial stop-and-frisk policy. We're going to break down what this landmark decision might mean, and we will hear from a very animated Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who is vowing to appeal. And later, Attorney General Eric Holder calling for major changes. Those harsh sentences for drug-related crimes, he wants to tone them down. Is that fitting and fair, or is it soft on crime? Tonight, we debate. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us this Monday evening, August 12th. And we begin tonight with big news on stop and frisk. In a 100-page and 195-page, I should say, decision, Judge Shira Shandlin, she ruled that the NYPD stop and frisk tactic, it violates the civil rights of thousands of New Yorkers. She also appointed a monitor to reform the program. The judge saying in part, quote, "The evidence at trial revealed that the NYPD has an unwritten policy of targeting the right people, quote unquote, for stops. In practice, the policy encourages the targeting of young Black and Hispanic men based on their prevalence in local crime complaints. This is a form of racial profiling." And she noted that 90% of the stops resulted in no arrest. Now, you may wonder how the mayor reacted. Well, he reacted very strongly with a vow to appeal the ruling, perhaps if he has to, all the way to the highest court in the land. And His Honor did not mince words when it came to the judge and the case.
This is a very dangerous decision made by a judge that I think just does not understand how policing works and what is compliant with the U.S. Constitution as determined by the Supreme Court.
As is teased throughout the show today, one of the angrier press conferences you're going to see from this mayor. In this statement, he tries to explain how he thinks stop, question, and frisk should work, and in doing so, he may also have inadvertently touched on the program's major flaw.
We only go where there is a report of a crime and the people that are there fit the description, or the police officer sees something that looks suspicious. It is true that also we think it is probably a deterrent to kids from carrying a gun, because they know if they happen to be in an area where a crime was committed and they happen to roughly fit the description, which is generally pretty broad, of the perpetrator, they could be stopped, and they don't want to have a gun in their hands.
Right there, that second half is really what you could read when you go through the judge's nearly 200-page opinion, that she stresses how the 4th and 14th Amendments seem to go out the window with this policy. Now, Bloomberg, his anger seems to really hit a peak here when talking about why he thinks a federal monitor, or for that matter even an inspector general, could be dangerous for police officers.
You're a police officer. You have to know what orders to follow. If somebody pulls a gun and you want to get home to your family, you don't have time to say, well, now, wait a second. The commissioner said one thing, the monitor said another, and the IG said another. By that time, you're dead. And I'd like to see you go to the funeral and explain to the family why their son or husband or father is not coming home at night.
Now, as for the NYPD Commissioner Ray Kelly, the big insult was the notion that police were profiling particular groups of people.
What I find most disturbing and offensive about this decision is the notion that the NYPD engages in racial profiling. That simply is recklessly untrue. We do not engage in racial profiling. It is prohibited by law. It is prohibited by our own regulations. We train our officers that they need reasonable suspicion to make a stop. And I can assure you that race is never a reason to conduct a stop.
All right, so we've heard from the mayor and his police commissioner. You'll be hearing more from them throughout the show. They on the losing side of this decision, if you will. The plaintiffs, they obviously had and heard what the mayor and his police commissioner had to say, and they weren't buying it.
Well, what it means is that what the community has been saying for now more than 15 years, and what folks in this city who have been interested in justice have been saying for 15 years, has been vindicated. A federal judge has found that the NYPD has engaged in systemic racial profiling and unconstitutional stop and frisk for years. And we know the mayor and the police commissioner have been denying this. They've said there is no problem. We're doing everything by the book. What are people complaining about? Well, guess what? It's not just us who's been complaining. The federal judge has found that what they've been doing is illegal and it's discriminatory and it needs to stop.
All right, and that the lead attorney on the plaintiff's side who sat down with Dominic earlier this afternoon. Okay, let's bring in our panel on this. We have Mayo Bartlett, former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. Dominic Carter, who I mentioned, political journalist, author, has been covering this story since the very beginning, and who was with the plaintiff's attorneys earlier today. And Reverend Troy DeCohen. He is the pastor of the Mount Vernon Heights Congregational Church, and our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. Gentlemen, thank you all. I appreciate it. And May, I'm going to start with you. Help break down for us through the legalese what this means. It seems pretty declaratively that the judge looked at all the information and she said, this doesn't pass constitutional muster. It's no more, trust. We're not going to put a monitor in charge of this, and to change the policy. It was a pretty resounding condemnation of the program from the judge, right?
Absolutely, and what it suggests fairly strongly is the fact that you can't trust the NYPD to police itself. We've been assured by the police commissioner and by the mayor for years that the police department has no racial bias, that it's not randomly stopping individuals, that there's a basis. And when their feet were put to the fire, it came out crystal clear that there really was no rational basis for stopping people, that if you were African or Latino, you were exponentially greater, had a greater likelihood of being stopped for no reason, because again, out of 600,000 stops, 500,000 people were found to have committed no crime at all, not to have possessed a gun, not one marijuana cigarette, nothing, which means that in fact, you found that there were more African American and Latino men being stopped than there were African American and Latino men in the communities themselves.